Hello, my name is Ben Doyle. I'm a macroeconomics student, and essentially today I'm going to be going through a few key issues with using gross national happiness as an index to measure well-being in a state, and conversing with the Bhutan example that we've been brought to our attention to, like a case study, right? So there are a few issues I want to tackle here. Firstly, on practicality. Secondly, on government accountability, and thirdly, on utility. But firstly, what do we actually mean by gross national happiness index? Essentially, this is like hypothetically speaking, not really grounded in the example. This is just like an idea of like, are your citizens happy, and is this a good way to measure like the well-being of a state? So I'll also converse with the Bhutan example, which is a bit more nuanced than this. So firstly, there are issues, especially in the Bhutan example, with using a lot of resources to acquire all this information. In Bhutan, they have like seven, eight, like no, I think nine indicators, which they basically aggregate to form this one index. This could be an issue because you have to use like a lot of resources in order to get all this information in the first place. And secondly, people like don't know their objective happiness. There are a few indicators here, such as good governance, where there is no objective aggregate measure. We can say like, oh yes, the government of Bhutan is a 9 out of 10. We don't really have like an objective way to base this off of. Not only this, but also on psychological well-being in general. Humans have no way to objectively say, yes, I'm doing an 8 out of 10, or even like relatively to other people. We can't epistemologically know whether we're doing like as well as someone else, because it's impossible to like transfer this information in a way which like everybody can understand at the same level, because of like linguistic barriers, or like even just philosophical like sort of understandings of the self barriers, where people have different ideas of what happiness actually feels like it is. We have no way to account for this, which is a problem of the objectivity of this measure. So secondly, on government accountability. So it's like a less direct link to GDP. A less direct link to like government effectiveness than GDP is, because with GDP we know that the government can influence this directly through things like subsidies and like laws, but there's like, when you break it down to like a national happiness, there are too many factors influencing this, which means that if it's like a low national happiness one year in comparison to another, it's very hard to pinpoint the exact thing that went wrong or the exact thing that needs to be changed. And secondly, it reduces accountability. If we've got no way to show like the government is directly responsible for this, it can reduce the accountability of the government, which basically means that like the government, even if it like lives in a happy state, and even if the government's doing a shit job, the government doesn't really cut any slack for this. This becomes like the only way we measure a state. And thirdly, just on utility. So it's not really a useful macroeconomic goal due to the reasons I said before, that there's like so many other things which influence it. And secondly, we don't even know if it's a useful philosophical goal. If this is the actual like goal of society, the goal of macroeconomics is to achieve happiness. Maybe it's to achieve emotional diversity and like general mental well-being, which doesn't necessarily mean happiness. So these are essentially a few reasons why this could be an issue. Thanks for listening.